whatever questions you have, you can ask as we go along, and then Kathleen and I can stay on for as long as we need to answer any of the questions. Do you want to just run through, because Christina is new to this group, she's going to Zanzibar, and the rest of you guys are going to Indonesia. Would you just mind all introducing yourself really quickly so that we can talk to each other and have discussion as well? And Caroline, why don't you go ahead and start?
Sure. My name is Caroline Jeter. I'm going to Indonesia to work at the Mollymots Girls' School with Grace as well. We're going to be teaching English to middle school and high school students, and I'm from San Francisco Bay Area. I go to Notre Dame de Namur University, multiple subject teaching credential program. So, yeah.
Thank you. Christina, go ahead. We'll just go straight across.
Right on. My name's Christina. I live in a small town in New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. I go to McDaniel College, and I'm studying exercise science and Spanish. I'm headed to Zanzibar I'll be teaching as well, and I'll be teaching biology in the Zanzibari public school.
Great. Thank you. Isabel, you want to go ahead?
Oh, sorry. I'm Isabel. I live outside of Philadelphia. I go to school at Queen's University of Charlotte. I'm going to be a junior, and I'm going to Indonesia to work with PKBI.
Which is the Indonesian version of Planned Parenthood. Good. Thanks, Isabel. And Paula?
Hi, I'm Paula. I'm from New York City. I go to the University of Delaware. I'm going to Indonesia. Not sure what I'm doing there yet, but I'm sure I will find out soon. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
You will find out soon, I promise. The executive director of Dion Interfiti has been on an international trip. We are promised that she will be back on Wednesday in Indonesia. So hopefully by the end of the week, Paula. Sorry.
Okay, no, don't be sorry. Just whenever you guys know.
Okay, so guys, this is the most important thing, taking responsibility for safety. We have all these great intentions in terms of what we want to accomplish from an impact perspective, from a citizen diplomacy perspective, from building your own personal and professional skills and experiences, but none of it means anything if we don't take responsibility for our own safety. And so the program that we've put together for you guys, in large part, is based off of my best practices of working in international relations, international development for the last 15 years, largely in the Middle East. And my goal for this is that I hope to transfer a certain skill set or way of looking at things to you guys and to our other unofficial ambassadors, so that you can do this whenever you want. I mean, Paula, that's fantastic that you are traveling around Europe right now with your friends, and that's an outcome of success. From in my eyes, that people feel comfortable doing that kind of thing and being lifelong travelers, and even just being more conscious of safety and risk in your everyday life, and when you go out at night, and just be thinking about a number of different things, so that you're equipped to have careers working in international relations if you want, or if you want to go on family vacations with your family now, or your families when you're older, or that you just feel confident and capable in doing these things. And for me, I mean, my experiences in this vary from being a State Department official and having that, having a certain set of regulations and restrictions that had to follow, to being a study abroad student in Jerusalem many years ago, to being a graduate student living in Jordan and Egypt by myself after 9/11 and during the war with Iraq, and then working in Palestinian villages and refugee camps, an environment with a sort of moderate degree of risk from a threat perspective of different kinds of extremist elements. And so you guys are not going into any of those situations, but the things that I've gleaned from that we've put into your manual, which I hope that if you haven't taken a look at, that you at least will spend some time looking in particular at this section of taking responsibility for safety, before you guys go, and what we're going to talk about in this session today. If you see from the agenda, we're going to break this down into talking about things to do before you go, while you're traveling and being safe while you travel, and then once you're there, and best practices, and then some very specific topics like transportation, sexual harassment, other lessons learned, and hopefully we'll have time to go through some different scenarios and what it is that one should do in these scenarios. I'd also want to spend a couple minutes talking about your insurance package, which is a really good insurance package. So to start off with pre-departure, and once again, just feel free to ask questions as we go along. How many of you guys have already enrolled with the STEP program, the State Department? Show of hands. All right, Caroline, very good. So the STEP program, and Kathleen will post a link to it right now, where you can just Google STEP and State Department. This is a way for you to officially register with our State Department and to let them know that you are going to be in either Tanzania or Indonesia, depending on which country that you're going on. And the benefits of doing this for is that you're accounted for. That in the event that, let's say, there's a natural disaster and the embassy has to reach out to all Americans in order to ascertain that you're okay, or if there's an evacuation, to find out where you are for an evacuation. This is how they know where you are. They take your email, they put you on a list, and they send what's called a warden message, where if there's an event, they let you know that it's happened. If there's something they perceive to be a threat, then they let you know that that's happening. I get all these emails for all these different countries where we send people to, and like one of the most recent ones we got was about May Day in Morocco and protests related to labor in Morocco. And some of them are just totally harmless things like that, like beware of the protests, don't go downtown at such and such a time. And others are really useful pieces of information that you wouldn't get otherwise and that are delivered to your doorstep. So it shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to put in your contact information and your passport number. You should put in the information in terms of that we have in your manuals about how to reach you, and you're officially registered with the State Department. Next on the list is creating a backup of all of your information. Specifically, we already have a copy of your passport, which is good, but you should make a copy of the first page of your passport and carry it with you, and very importantly, keep it separate from where you keep your passport. Some people, when they travel, like to have their passport with them, on them at all times. Other people who tend to lose things don't like to do that, and they keep their passport in a safe place. For both groups, those who are living in Zanzibar and those who are living in Indonesia, you will be able to keep your passport locked in a bag in your apartment or in your room. If you want, you can give your passport to Ulrika or to IU to keep in a safe. Ulrika could keep it in a safe, or IU could keep it at the university. That's something that you want. But very importantly, have a copy of your passport, so in the event that you lose your passport, you have something to work from in terms of getting to the U.S. Embassy and demonstrating who you are, and getting the process going for getting a new passport. What I would also do is make a copy front and back of, just on the copy of the passport, one of the things that you can do is also email it to yourself. So you have a paper copy, and then you also have a copy that's in your email in case you need to access it, you lose everything. I would do the same thing with the front and back of your ATM card or your credit card. Really important to do the back as well, so that you have the numbers to call in the event that your credit card is stolen or that you lose it. Also important, sounds obvious, but keep this stuff separate from where you keep the actual card. You can email it to us as well if you want for us to hold a copy of it for you. We're happy to do that. You can email it to a family member if that's a better way to go for you. But you should have backups of all that. Any questions about that? No. Okay. Next thing is medications, prescriptions, and vaccinations. To me, I think that this is the area, I mean, I should say as a preface, we do everything humanly possible to take all risk off the table, and it's just impossible to take all risk off the table. And so, you know, in terms of what we set up with housing and transportation and having a country coordinator and all these other things, we are trying to alleviate as much risk as possible so that you can focus on your service and doing a good job in your service. I think that the biggest thing that I worry about for you guys is the issue of getting sick. And with medications, prescriptions, and vaccinations, this is your chance to do preventative measures not to get sick. For all the places where you guys are going, you should not expect that you will have the kind of pharmaceutical access that you have here in the United States. That said, I have bought Cipro at a drugstore in Yogyakarta. I went in, I asked for it. It cost less than $3 to get a whole prescription, and I used it, and I was happy to have it. Like I had turned out that the Cipro that I had with me had expired, and I needed to get a refill of it. So there are pharmacies in the places where you're going, but you just shouldn't expect that. Like if you're taking stuff for allergies or skin or birth control or whatever it is that whatever prescriptions that you have, get them filled entirely before you go, so you're not counting on finding a pharmacy in Yogyakarta or in Zanzibar. Malaria pills are a requirement for the Zanzibar volunteers. Malaria is no joke. Christina, you're the only one in this group that's going to Zanzibar. You'll see people walking around in winter coats in Zanzibar in the summer because they are lifelong sufferers of malaria. Fortunately, we've never had a volunteer that got malaria, and I'm hoping that we'll continue that stretch. You know, for Indonesia, it's a recommendation from the CDC. I'll tell you that when I come to Indonesia to get your program started, I'm going to take malaria pills while I'm there. I'm going to take DEET with me, like DEET wipes, DEET, and I'm going to put that on at night before I go out. You know, some of the different rural places that you might want to go on the weekends, you know, there's mosquitoes there. And I was just looking on the CDC website, and, you know, there hasn't been an outbreak of Zika in Indonesia, but it's something that you should keep on your mind and don't want to be messing with the mosquitoes in any sort of way. And so the DEET wipes are another thing that I would recommend taking with, like something like 25% DEET, just to keep mosquitoes away. One of the things I really want to highlight about the immunizations is typhoid is no joke as well. 2 of our partners in Indonesia have gotten typhoid this past year. These are Indonesians. You know, one living in Yogyakarta and one living in Aceh. And so they don't have the immunization against it. We've had a volunteer in Zanzibar in the past and also a volunteer in Indonesia who got typhoid. They were miserable. And instead of getting the immunization, they got a homeopathic. The one in Indonesia got a homeopathic alternative and thought that that would be okay. You know, regardless of what your political viewpoints are on immunizations, like this stuff is out there. It's dangerous, and you know, please take it seriously in terms of getting the necessary immunizations for this. Any questions about prescriptions, immunizations, vaccines? No. Okay.
I actually have one question to ask really quick. Do we have to register any of those? Like if we have malarial prescriptions, like does that have to be registered like with the country or anything before we bring it into country?
No, you don't. Some places will look for the yellow card that demonstrates that you have the certain immunization or vaccine. But in Tanzania, I think that's actually one of the places where they do look for that. But it depends on who's looking at your passport.
Right on. Okay, thanks.
Okay. I know a couple of you have not traveled abroad before or have just traveled to places close by. And so for this next part, in terms of just talking about traveling, there's an element here of preparing for a really long trip with a number of layovers. One of the things to think about is, and Kathleen will share everybody's flight information with each other, is linking up with somebody else from your group and just being able to travel together and spend the time together. I know that, I just got my ticket to go to Indonesia. It's a 25-hour trip one way and 28 hours coming back. It's a long trip. One of the things that I do to prepare for that kind of trip is I take an empty water bottle with me so that I can fill it up and not be subject to whether they're going to provide water in a certain airport or even whether you want to be drinking the tap water in a certain airport. Once you get out of the United States, you can generally have a full water bottle in different places. But also, buy bottled water in the airport if on a long layover, and don't, just go thirsty because you don't want to spend the money. Another thing is to, you guys know what it is that you like to eat for snacks or how you deal with not eating for long periods of time. So sometimes airline food can be, pretty good. Sometimes it's terrible. So, think about, bringing power bars with you, or, energy bars or nuts, or sort of, other kinds of snacks, sandwiches that don't need to be refrigerated, but just so that you're not going for a full 24-hour stretch where you are not eating. If you tend to get headaches on flights or you get dehydrated, you should be creating a little first aid kit for yourself that you're bringing with you anyway that has like Band-Aids, Neosporin, Aleve or Tylenol, whatever your pain medication is of choice. And just have that in your carry-on bag with you when you go. Another thing is luggage can get lost, and I always pack an extra pair of underwear, extra pair of socks, and another shirt in my carry-on bag, regardless of what it is that I check. So if it takes my luggage a couple days to catch up with me, then I'm not totally I'm not in distress in terms of I need to go to the store right away to find something. And but I always also carry my toiletries with me in terms of like travel toiletries so that I can be comfortable on the trip. And also, like I wear glasses so that I have my glasses in case they, my luggage gets lost. But think about those little things that you want to make sure that you take with you. And also, Kathleen, do we have Facebook groups yet for each of these countries?
Not yet.
Facebook pages?
But I can start one ASAP.
Okay, so that'll also be a way for you to communicate with each other. I mean, you're all going to be living together, so there's no reason why everyone has to bring, X amount of. You can create a joint first aid kit together. You can share information about, when people are arriving. For the folks who are going to Jogja, you'll have a little bit of a layover in the Jakarta airport. You guys can meet up in the airport if you're not on the same flights together. There's like a Starbucks there, which is an easy place to meet up. You don't have to have Starbucks, you can just meet up there. And in Dar es Salaam, the airport is pretty small. You guys should be able to meet up there as well. Some of you have layovers, could be in Europe or in Ethiopia, and that's another chance. You might want to think about loading up movies or bringing a book, on an iPad or whatever it is, but you can't really expect to sleep that whole time. So whatever it is that you do to entertain yourselves, and if you don't have Wi-Fi, I would prepare for that as well. Any questions about what to do? This is all before you get there. Any thoughts? Concerns, especially for those who haven't taken a lengthy trip like this before? Okay, so let's move on to, do you guys have access to your manuals?
Yeah, it's on my email.
Okay, so the next section I want to look at is this taking responsibility for safety section. I think that that's generally around page 58 for you guys. And the first thing to talk about is what is it that you do in the event of an emergency. Do you guys see that in that orange box there? So the first thing that you do in the event of emergency is to remove yourself from the situation. You're walking down the street in downtown Jogja. You see a protest coming your way. as inquisitive as all of you guys are, it's not the time to pull out your camera and start snapping photos of the protest and doing portraits of people, but it's time to turn the other way and go and find the most convenient and closest public place that will be welcoming towards you. That could be a hotel, that could be a Western fast food chain, that could be a car dealership, that could be a mall, that could be a bank. You're looking for places that share common ground on, we're all in this together in terms of our quest for, mutual respect, prosperity, and dignity. If people want to sell you a car or sell you a meal, they don't want to hurt you. They, are more likely than not to, offer you shelter and protection, whether a threat is specifically geared towards you or whether it's just a threat to everybody, like let's say in the event of a natural disaster. Let's say you're in a restaurant and someone gets really angry, a guy gets really angry at his wife and starts, turning a table over and screaming at her and whatnot. Sadly, this is not the time or the place for you to intervene and try to play peacemaker between a husband and a wife. It's a time for you to get up and just remove yourself from the situation and make sure this guy doesn't spill over in terms of pulling out a knife or whatever it is and getting stuck in the middle of something where you have no idea what's going on. So step number one is remove yourself from the situation as quickly and as seamlessly as possible. Step number two is to call your country coordinator. You guys have a whole team of people in both countries who are available to help you at any time of the day. That's led by AU in Indonesia, and you have another country coordinator, AMPI, and then these three buddies. These numbers should all be in your local cell phone. You should immediately reach out and start calling and saying, this is where I'm located, this is what's happening, what should I do? Is this something real, or is this like, am I okay? And give them a context to understand where you are. And it's like kind of phoning in help before, like it's like when someone, it's an age-old thing in terms of, like, let's say somebody, you're in the metro, someone has a heart attack, you don't immediately start giving them CPR. You make sure someone's calling 911 to make sure reinforcements are on the way, and then you start tending to the person and seeing how you can take care of them. You want to alert people that you're in a situation and that you need help, or perhaps you think that you need help. In Zanzibar, it's the same deal with Ulrika. Kathleen is going to be there as well as your team leader, and so reach out to Kathleen. And then we also have our NGO partner, Mr. Omar at Zayadisa. That's the third person who you would call and reach out to for help. But I don't think there's a situation where your country coordinator doesn't answer the phone, but if your country coordinator is not able to immediately answer the phone, those are your backups in that order. And then it's also, like, I'm on a 24-hour call basis as well, is that you can call me or text me or alert me to what's going on, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can, and also begin to mobilize other things that are able to help you. So if needed, call local emergency contact number. I'm not sure what situation that would be, but I do know that in both the countries, Indonesia and Zanzibar, that you can assume or rely that the police and firemen are on your side. In some places, you have to worry about corruption or a situation getting worse by contacting local authorities, and that's not the case in either of those places. We've never had a situation, thankfully, of a sexual or other kind of physical assault happening with one of our volunteers. We do keep a crisis counselor in our Rolodex, though, and his name is Murray. He's a pretty experienced guy. You can always reach out to me or Kathleen to have a difficult conversation or to talk about a situation. If you'd like to speak to someone who is a trained professional in that area, though, Murray is available too. We can put you in touch with them if you don't want to reach out directly, or you can contact Murray directly and seek support. Any questions about any of that? Okay, so look, I'm going through all these things and I'm talking about them, and you could take one way you could take this is that I expect these things to happen, but you shouldn't take it that way. You should take it as we have to be prepared in the event that something does happen, that we know how we're going to react, that we have to be aware of the environment that we're in and be looking around and just, you know, be sensitive in that way, and also to be thinking about, if this happens, then this is what I do. If we thought certain these situations like that I'm describing were going to happen, we wouldn't run programs to these countries. But it's our responsibility in terms of setting up these programs to think through all of these things and to support you guys in this way. So I don't want you to get hyper paranoid as a result of us talking about this, but this is part of the best practices, that we have to talk about these things. You know, in that vein, that's why we do the reflection sessions every week, and that's why we have your country coordinator visit you on a weekly basis to just scope out what's going on at your placement. There's things that could appear to, like, our experience in our eyes as if, well, why are all these guys hanging around outside of the school that I come to every day? Or is it normal for, you know, this group of drivers to be, you know, sitting around outside of our office? And, you know, that's a great topic to bring up in the reflection sessions. It's not just talking about, well, I'm having these difficulties teaching because of X, Y, and Z, but, you know, Ulrika or Ayu, what is it that you think about this situation? Is that normal? And they'll have seen it with their own eyes because they're coming to visit you, and they'll also be able to give you contextual analysis of it. I'm going to actually skip ahead and talk about sexual harassment right now because it fits into this, and then I'll come back to these 5 daily best practices of, you know, sort of taking responsibility for safety. But this is this is going to feed into sexual harassment in a specific way. Under no circumstances is the cost of doing business, of being an unofficial ambassador, is there an expectation that you're going to suffer sexual harassment in Indonesia or Zanzibar. Our Zanzibari or Indonesian partners would be mortified if they thought that as hosts that part of the experience was for their volunteers and their visitors to experience sexual harassment in the workplace or as a part of connection to doing service and building partnerships together. So I want to wipe that away from your mind, that this should be an expectation of yours that you're going to be sexually harassed as a result of being an unofficial ambassador. I think that our experience has been that there's sexual harassment is such a subjective topic, but there's really 2 very big baskets of sexual harassment where different incidents can fall into one of these 2 baskets. One of them is it's just completely overt that somebody is making you feel uncomfortable in a sexual way by what it is that they're saying, inappropriate touching, or just creating an environment that is inappropriate. And that can be from like hitting on you, asking you out, touching, anything like that, and it's just clear cut. That's sexual harassment. The other basket, which is a little bit more difficult to define, is making you feel uncomfortable, perhaps because of innuendo or nature of conversations, that, you know, it could fall into a cross-cultural faux pas, or it's, you know, sexual harassment. And, you know, where we stand on this is that if you feel like you're being sexually harassed, you're being sexually harassed. No one is going to question what your judgment is in assessing that situation. We are going to ask a lot of questions, though, in order to correct the situation. In the years that we've been doing this, we've had 2 cases of sexual harassment. One fell in the overt category, and one fell into the subjective category. With the overt category, it was something that happened in Tajikistan on the first day of somebody's placement, and there was a guy that, you know, was a little bit aggressive in terms of asking out one of our volunteers and wanting to get to know her in a more social circumstance that wasn't appropriate wasn't appropriate. Thankfully, a volunteer immediately said something to the country coordinator. The country coordinator immediately met with the supervisor at the placement, and it was nipped in the bud entirely. That person was told that they could not have any other interaction with the volunteer, that interaction was inappropriate, and everyone was, sufficiently aghast, and it was, fixed in real time. And that volunteer had a great experience and felt as if she was in a comfortable work environment. The second case, unfortunately, the volunteer suffered in silence. She felt this was someone who was teaching in a Zanzibari public school. She felt as if there was inappropriate comments made to her by a couple of teachers, that there was sort of regular check-ins that made her feel uncomfortable. There was invitations to come to their house for dinner, or to come to someone's house for dinner. And on the surface of it, it could have been this guy, this one guy in particular, was being, very friendly and wanted to invite her to meet his family, etc., etc. But the key thing was that she felt uncomfortable with the whole thing. And it wasn't just like, part of her cross-cultural interactions, but it impacted just how she felt going to work every day. And really, to my great regret, she didn't say anything about it, despite having reflection sessions every week and one-on-one meetings. She didn't say anything about it until the night she left the country. And so there was nothing that we could do about it effectively in real time to help her navigate the situation and to make it better. After we heard about it, we immediately had Ulrika meet with the principal, meet with our partner at the Ministry of Education. We described the situation, we said what was happening, and they were aghast that this volunteer felt as if she was in an unwelcome work environment. They talked to the two teachers specifically, and there was one, there was a little bit more than the other, that they felt that this volunteer felt as if we're making unwanted advances. And it was made perfectly clear, that this was not acceptable. And one of the ways to frame this is, am I being spoken to in a way that a Zanzibari woman would be spoken to, or an Indonesian woman would be spoken to? In Arabic, there's this expression called Eid, which is shame, and it would be disgraceful to speak to like an Egyptian or a Moroccan or a woman like your sister, your mother, your daughter in any of these countries in this kind of way. And so what I want for you guys to take away from this is, do not suffer in silence. There are things that can be done in terms of direct engagement to make these problems go away. And it's not something that's tolerable to us. Some people feel as if they want to confront these situations head on. That's okay to do that. My experience is it's much better to do it not in a one-on-one situation, but to pull in an advocate like a country coordinator, or Kathleen as well in the case of Zanzibar, that can help you to have productive conversations that solve the problem. But I beg you, please, if something comes up, do not keep it to yourself. And if for whatever circumstance you feel as if like one of the people who you might go to talk about a problem is actually the source of the harassment, please bring it to me. I would be aghast if that was the situation, but we have to handle that situation as well. So like in Indonesia, for instance, if you feel as if one of the buddies is too chummy, then I want to know that, and I can fix that problem. But you have to tell me. Any thoughts on this or questions on this?
Yeah, I have a question. I think as far as I think the first thought that came to mind was like in a teaching position, if if the children's safety is at stake, how do the in-country coordinators have some training to potentially handle a situation with some sort of finesse, I guess? Because if I don't know, I was just thinking what if someone were to kind of be coming forward, but utilizing kids in your class as sort of a point of leverage. So made me if I had kids in my class that I thought were in danger, I might be less likely to say this is making me uncomfortable. So I'm just wondering if it's very blurry how to go forward with that.
So I'm not quite clear on the exact scenario, but in terms of just a very big problem you describe in terms of you're witnessing people being in danger in your work environment, you gotta shoot that up the ladder to Ulrika or IU and talk about, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Please help me to understand this. and what is it that can be done about this. Don't take on the responsibility of solving that problem by yourself, because one of the things here is the cultural context, and just we just have to be humble in terms of acknowledging what it is that we understand that we see and what it is that we might not understand as a part of this.
Christina, if it's like a parent of one of the students you're teaching, and if that's what you were thinking, like a parent, and it's like you're teaching the child and the parent is somehow like trying to get involved with you, and the student is in the middle. I think that's what you're probably trying to say.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a scenario to speak with Ulrika in Zanzibar. You can talk to me, Ulrika, and your principal at your school as quickly as possible, because you do obviously want to minimize any sort of harm to both yourself and your student.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure.
Good. Other comments or scenarios that come to mind? I can literally hear crickets, like a crow in the background, or. Okay, so let's go back to some daily practices that I've found to be incredibly useful and have helped me to stay safe. The first of I got 5 of these that I like to talk about. The first is to conduct yourself professionally and to expect respect. Part of that is how you dress to go to work, and dressing in a professional way. Part of that is your body language in terms of making eye contact with people, smiling at people. I think smile is one of the best weapons or safeguards for someone who is looking for a victim. Like, let's say you're in a market or whatever the case may be. Like, you don't want to present yourself as an attractive victim. Stand up straight, carry yourself with confidence. That doesn't mean walk around strutting and being arrogant, but just even if it's a big acting job, exude confidence to the outside world, and expect that the outside world is going to treat you with the level of respect that you deserve. Sometimes that's harder to do than other times, but it's a great safety vest to put on and wear. The next one is to be patient and calm in the face of daily life. This is something that I have to remind myself about, in particular in Indonesia whenever I go there, is that just things move a lot slower than they do here in the United States, and there's no reason to push people along and to try to get them to operate on your clock. Be patient with them. Think about your hand gestures and what it is intimating to other people as you put it out there. I'll say also in Zanzibar, I know a handful of Kiswahili words, and one of them is pole pole, which means slowly, slowly, because people are always constantly saying pole pole, slow down, you're going too fast. It's a different pace, and this is probably more along the lines of keeping yourself mentally safe than physically safe. Is just try to acclimate yourself to the pace of people around you and don't drive yourself crazy. It doesn't mean start showing up to meetings half an hour late, because that's what other people do, but just be understanding, take deep breaths, and go with the flow in that kind of way. I really want to encourage you to use all 5 senses and to keep your head on a swivel. It's pretty hard to ride the subway or the metro and find somebody who's doesn't have earbuds in their ears and isn't listening to music or a podcast or watching something. You don't want to miss anything when you're in these places. Like, you guys should be sponges soaking up everything around you. But B, you need your hearing. You need to know, is it okay to cross the street right now? Because people don't always obey the traffic laws. Or is there something going on behind me that I should be aware of? Don't handicap yourself by taking away your listening skills. Also, this is an all female group in this webinar. but for guys in certain conservative cultures, when you meet someone who has their head covered, you don't necessarily want to reach out your hand in terms of touching, and you want to wait for a woman to reach out her hand so that you know that whether they will touch a male stranger's hand or not in terms of shaking hands and saying hello. For you guys, you can all get away, if the culture is such that it's a kiss hello, like on both cheeks or a few times on different cheeks, you should all feel comfortable doing that. There's no expectation that you would do that when you meet like a guy for the first time, but it's when you would meet a new woman for the first time, if that's what people do, and depends on like the subculture of where you are. I can't say off the bat, like when you meet another woman in Zanzibar, that you would kiss her on the cheek, or similarly in Indonesia. But like, take a look around and see what other people are doing. The fourth one is don't be a hero, and I already think you guys are heroes. I think it's amazing that you guys are going to volunteer with people you've never yet met before on the other side of the world in order to help improve other people's lives and try to do things about how we see these parts of the world here in the United States. You guys are already in that category of being heroes. Like we talked about, it's not your job to break up a fight. It's not your job to stop a protest and get on a car and explain America's positions on letting Muslims into the country to like a whole bunch of people that you don't know. Like, your job is to support locally led initiatives and to be a hero in that context, and to show up and be in the classroom every day or in your NGO every day and do what it is that's asked of you. One of the scenarios that I was going to talk about later was a volunteer we had in Bangladesh who was on an overnight boat ride, and terrible situation happened where a guy started beating his wife very publicly on this boat ride, and this volunteer, against better judgment, or maybe because of better judgment, it depends on the context, he intervened in it, and he kept the husband from hitting his wife, and like he stood over her, and there was a whole crowd there, and the moment passed, and fortunately he came back home unharmed, but who knows what damage he caused long term, to this family, or what happened after that boat ride was over, because possibly he showed up, this husband, and undercut him or his authority, however he perceived it, in a certain circumstance in his community. It's a terrible situation, and as much as it hurts, and as much as we may intervene in that situation or call 911, if this was happening right in front of us outside on Wisconsin Avenue, it's just not your place to take that step in Indonesia or Zanzibar this summer. The best thing that you can do is make sure local authorities are aware of the situation and try to get them involved in it, rather than putting yourself into the situation yourself. And then the last one that I like to talk about is to take care of yourself physically and mentally. From the physical perspective, there's a whole range of delicious foods that you are going to be exposed to that perhaps you've never even thought of before, that your body has never digested before, and I would just say ease into it. You guys shouldn't be drinking the tap water in either one of the countries that you're going to. There you'll have access to bottled water or a water cooler. I don't think it's a good idea to start acclimating yourself to the local water. You guys are not there for long enough periods of time to have that be a good cost-benefit scenario of what's gonna happen with that. I eat a lot of rice or the equivalent of bread to line my stomach, as I'm coming up to speed in these different countries, sort of wade in on the sampling stuff rather than diving in. Like Forodani Gardens in Zanzibar has everything you can imagine that's fried. Get there when early on in the evening when the stuff is fresh, rather than when it's been sitting out. Same deal in Indonesia. There's all kinds of street vendors, all kinds of delicious things to be had. Eating peeled fruits is another good way to go in terms of lining your stomach and getting yourself acclimated. On the mental standpoint, if you're the type of person that needs some downtime, then take the downtime, build it into your schedule. Make sure that you're giving yourself space, that if you write in a journal, if you exercise in order to get that headspace, find ways to do those things while you're there, and don't just become this, combustible person that's going to blow up because you don't have the outlet that you need. If you draw energy and downtime from being with other people, then don't just use the reflection sections for that. Like, spend time with other volunteers, spend time with your buddies, figure out how to meet other locals and to get to know other people, but sort of know what your own needs are from that mental standpoint. Any thoughts on any of those?
I have a question just regarding the water.
Yeah.
Do you think that we should, would you suggest to buy one of those water bottles that have the filter in it, maybe? Or is it not even worth it?
You could. I'm pretty sure in the guest house where you guys are staying that you guys will have a water cooler that you can just fill up your water bottles in. But we'll check that for you, though.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So next one to talk about, we have transportation still, and let me just go through that really quickly. Transportation is one of those vulnerabilities that we do our best to take off the table for you guys. So in Indonesia, we have contracted with a driver and a car/minivan who will pick you up and drop you off from your workplace every day, and who will also take you on our different excursions. When we do our in-country orientation, we will give you phone numbers for calling taxis. Taxis are really inexpensive. Aside from getting sick, the biggest risk that you have in Indonesia, in my opinion, are mopeds. We have a situation, so we make it one of our guidelines that our volunteers shouldn't be driving around on mopeds, shouldn't be riding on mopeds. It's Paula, you can relate to this. It's the equivalent of if you took a 10-year-old Indonesian child and said, here's a New York subway system, here's a map, go navigate it. It's something that a 10-year-old New Yorker can do really quite easily, if they grow up in the city and they can, are taught how to do it. But you guys are going to be blown away when you see these people flying around in Jakarta and Yogyakarta on mopeds. It's just, do some Googling about moped accidents in Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand. This is where people, get hurt, in these different places. So we've tried to make it so it's as easy as possible for you guys to get around and be independent without having to use mopeds in that regard. In Zanzibar, you're living in Stone Town, you're living in a World Heritage Site. Everything is walking distance. Christina, you'll be walking distance to your school. And we have a driver that we work with, so for different kinds of excursions that you want to do outside of Stone Town, Ulrika can help set that up for you on a relative basis. It's pretty inexpensive as to what you would pay for someone driving you around different places in the United States. We talked about the reflection sessions, and I guess the only thing I'd add on that is take them seriously. This is a chance to share these kinds of challenges and thoughts with your peer group. We're going to set it up so that you each take turns leading these reflection sessions. Use this as an opportunity not just to share, but to listen to what other people are saying. Other lessons learned and best practices. If you take a look at your manual, and we talked about that orange box there. If you turn the page, there's a couple of really good things there about preventative security, keys to being safe, awareness, and personal contact. There's links to some very good studies from the Peace Corps that's been doing this at a scale that's like a multiple of 100 of ours, or 50 of ours, and there's some really good lessons learned there. There's a link to the Overseas Security Advisory Council's Travel Safety Reference Guide. That's also worth clicking on and taking a look through. When we do this as a 2-hour session, there's several of these that I go through that I think are important, but I'm cognizant of the time and I want to get to other random questions that you guys have. So I would just direct you to look at the manual, look at these links, read through them. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Last two things to talk about are, I want to go through one scenario with you guys and then just talk about your insurance, and then we'll get to questions. The scenario that I have, I already talked about the one about the boat in Bangladesh. The other one was a real scenario that happened last summer in Morocco. One of our volunteers was being met at the train station in a major city by a driver that we had set up for her. The driver was a private driver, and she was coming back from a homestay weekend in a different city in Morocco. The driver unfortunately parked his car close enough to the rail station where all the local taxi drivers saw the car, and when they saw a foreigner come out and saw him grab what they thought was a fare that should have been open to all of them to get, they got really angry. They confronted the driver. They got in his face. They started yelling and screaming at him and pushing him. The volunteer was right there, right next to the driver. How should the volunteer have reacted? What should she have done?
I mean, she should have stayed calm and maybe, I guess, walked away from the situation and contacted her country coordinator immediately.
Yeah, very good. What else?
I mean, I feel like in that kind of situation, you want to put yourself in a place where you can't really be seen by who's participating in that situation.
Yeah, you got it. Where should the volunteer have gone to? You got it exactly right, Paul, that she should have walked away, but where should she have gone to?
Maybe if she was by the railroad station, like if there was a building there with where you could buy tickets or something.
Yeah, you got it. So the best thing to do would have been to turn right around, go back into the train station, tell the police officer what was going on outside, and call the country coordinator and let the country coordinator know what was going on and ask for advice on what is it that I should do next. Thankfully, this volunteer got really lucky, and she did do the right thing, and it turned out okay for her. This goes into the category of don't be a hero. So that this driver that she knew him, I know him, I like him, she likes him, and she just saw it as their fates were intertwined, and she had to defend and protect the driver. And so she started yelling at one of the people that was yelling at the driver. People got angry at her, started screaming at her. She got jostled a bit. Someone spat on her, and she got into the car. And eventually, the police came over and diffused the whole situation, but the driver ended up being assaulted. I'm so relieved that it worked out okay for her. Besides, I mean, the driver ended up being okay. I mean, that's not what you want to come out of this, but she just got lucky. She wasn't strategic. She wasn't good about this. She just got lucky. And the message I really want for you guys to take away from this briefing is don't engage in a trust fall. You guys are going to beautiful places with exceptionally kind and welcoming people, and the vast majority of the people who you're going to meet are going to embrace you with a warm, symbolic hug, and you're going to form friendships that I hope last for a really long time. But with all that said, you can't just engage in a trust fall, one of these deals where you fall backwards into the arms of the people who you meet and expect that everything is going to be okay. Is that I want you to be using those critical thinking skills. I want you to be thinking about, where's my exit? What do I do in the event that something goes sideways here? How is it that I can best protect myself first in this situation, and then look to be protecting others and helping others once it's clear that I'm going to be okay. And that's the big takeaway from this, is that you have to be your own best advocate in so many things in life, and also with your personal safety, is you have to be thinking about yourself, despite all the other things that people are doing around you to help keep you safe. The last thing for me to talk about before we get to questions is your insurance. Your insurance is a wonderful package. It has a couple qualities I want to describe for you, and because you have the options to extend and increase your insurance if you want. Your insurance begins when you set foot on the ground in Indonesia or in Tanzania. It does not begin when you leave your house and get on the airplane. One of the things that you may want to think about extending the insurance is that if you're traveling before you arrive in your destination, or if you're going to be traveling afterwards, I highly recommend contacting the insurance directly and extending your insurance. This insurance costs $1.50 a day. It is incredibly cheap. It covers you for evacuation, for medical evacuation. It covers you for trip interruption, which, different than medical evacuation, trip interruption is, let's say you break an arm and you don't have to be medically evacuated from Indonesia or Zanzibar, but you just no longer feel comfortable dealing with all the things that are part of everyday life there, and you want to go home. So the doctor writes you a note that says that that he recommends that you go home, and you have up to $3,000 of coverage to change your airplane ticket and to be able to go home. If something happens in your family and your nuclear family, and somebody gets sick and you need to come home and take care of them, that's trip interruption. If somebody passes away in your nuclear family and you need to, come home and take care of different things or just take care of yourself, that's covered as well. It also covers political unrest and natural disasters. So let's say there is a terrorist attack in Kenya, and there is a worldwide threat that put out by the State Department for all of East Africa. Then we do an evaluation as to whether the program is still viable, and the insurance will cover bringing you home. Let's say that there is a tsunami in Indonesia, and the country is in a state of national emergency. Then maybe it's not the best time for you guys to still be there, and we have to change your tickets and we have to bring you home for whatever reason. That's covered as well as part of natural disaster. If you get sick in terms of using the insurance, what you do is you get your receipts, you pay cash up front, which generally this is very cheap to get medical attention in these different countries. You get a receipt and then you submit it directly to the insurance. One really important thing about the insurance is that it's your insurance plan. We can be in touch with the insurance, we can let them know that you're going to contact them, we can help advocate for you, but it's between you and your families in terms of what your relationship is with your insurance and how it is that you're going to exercise it. So that's why we have all these frequently asked questions, all the information is in there, and it's really upon you guys to exercise the insurance when it is that, or if it is that you might need it. Kathleen, is there anything that I missed before we go to questions?
No, I think you hit everything that I can think of at least.
Okay, so let's see if I hit everything. Guys, what questions do you have? And I'm sorry, usually I like for it to have it be a lot more interactive, but this is one where there's just a certain amount of information you got to get through, then see what it triggers as far as a response. So what are you guys thinking about?
This isn't quite related to security, but I was just wondering how the sponsorship letters for the visa are progressing.
Yeah, me too. The latest promise is that we're going to have them on Thursday. Evidently, the director of Diane Interfiti and the director of international studies at Gajah University must be both out of the country at the same time, because we're waiting for the director of international studies to sign these letters and to send them to us. If it gets to a point where we think the window is too tight to get this, then what we're going to do is we're just going to have you send your passports to us, and we will use a visa service to just get all of them together, and then we'll send your passports back to you for your visas. But we're not yet at that point. I actually have a meeting at the Indonesian embassy on Monday morning. They're very supportive of our program. I'm not anticipating any problems with getting visas. I share in your frustration that we don't have it yet, and I'm probably even more frustrated because I've told you at least 3 times that we were going to have it by a certain date, and we don't have it yet. So I feel as if that makes me look bad, and I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I know. Me too.
But this is also a lesson in flexibility, right? And you might have to get used to that in your internship. Like, you know, just things might be moving at a little slower pace than you're used to, and it's tough.
What else, guys? Any questions?
I think something that you said in the last webinar, which unfortunately I wasn't with you three because I'm going to Zanzibar and not Indonesia, but was that we're sort of like each group, like in each country, can become a support network for each other. And it struck me because I think that's wicked important. And so something that I was just sort of, so I guess I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on potentially doing some sort of like an agreement like with the other people that are in country about like trying to really follow these safety things. And the reason I say it is just from a past experience that didn't go so well with someone in a group that we were trying to hold each other responsible, and something really dangerous happened, and then we were all like, wow, we blamed ourselves. So I think just in an attempt to sort of avoid that, do you have any ideas about maybe creating something like that in country, or just, I know we do the reflections each week, but maybe, I don't know, some kind of an agreement. And this is for everyone, not just Ben and Kathleen. Like if you have thoughts about other travel that you've done like that.
I wanted to see if anybody else wants to respond first before I do. Okay, so I think, Christina, I think it's a great idea. We do something a little bit less formally in some ways than a signed agreement. And that way, one, we have a conduct pledge that everybody signs as part of their orientation in country, which is, I think it's in your manual.
Yeah, I think so.
If not, it's not a big surprise. It's pretty basic in terms of what it says. But we also talk about, when we do the in-country orientation, we talk about some specific things in each country that we think one should be aware of. And those are mainly generated from our country coordinators who want to share things about their own culture and home environment. And we also talk about things about living together as a group and respecting each other's space and being supportive of each other. And we have like an open discussion about that. And one of the things that I always bring to this when I'm doing a country orientation is this idea of shared safety, and your actions do impact the actions of others. That if you're going out to nightclubs, or you're using drugs, or getting drunk, then you're absolutely affecting the safety of others. And one of the things that they do in Zanzibar, for instance, is you're not allowed to bring anybody back to the apartment without the agreement of everybody. So it's not just like, you just don't know. Like they do things like where they've had iftars that they've hosted for our country partners, and they've invited guests over for dinner, but there's no sort of casual, why don't you come back to our apartment and hang out with us, without making sure that it's well vetted and everybody who's living in the apartment together agrees that it's okay to bring an outsider into what's really everyone's sort of cherished personal space. So there's things that people have come up with like that I think are quite useful, but they can't be dictatorial. That they have to be agreed upon as a group. Kathleen, it seemed like you wanted to add something.
No,
Okay.
I don't. Just the same point that, you might feel like you're doing something just on your own, but it does affect the whole group. So I think that's a good point, Christina, and just agreeing on those rules from the start is the best way to go about it. So there are no, unexpected arguments or conflicts in the middle of your summer.
And what's something strange is that I think almost in every group that we've had, there's been at least one RA, or resident advisor, in the group somehow. I'm not sure why that is, but you generally get a lot of really good ideas about things that people are doing in group living environments on campus these days, from firsthand practice.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Caroline or Paula, any thoughts, questions, comments?
No, not right now. I'm sure they'll come to me later, but.
Okay, so it's not last call. So if you have any questions or thoughts, then please either call or email me or Kathleen, and we will get back to you. Just to talk about the housing for a minute, in Zanzibar, we've been in the same apartment for, this is the 4th year now. It's really centrally located in Stonetown. It's on the 3rd floor. There's a rooftop. There's a balcony. Someone's going to come and cook meals a few times a week and do shopping for you guys and clean. There's a water cooler, you know, with bottled water in it, and there's no air conditioning. So that's part of our eco footprint, that we want to be, you know, sensitive to how people are living there and live in the same way, and I think that's an important thing to do. But there's also an intercom where you can see who's downstairs and buzz people in or not. And you know, there's a good amount of foot traffic outside, and people hang out on stoops there as well. And we think it's a good situation. We haven't had problems in the past with it. In Indonesia, we've moved the housing to a new place this year, and I think one of the things we want to do is send you guys a link to see what the place looks like, and you can also see its GPS coordinates as well and what's surrounding it. It's a great guest house. It looks beautiful. It came really recommended. It's about 7 minutes away from campus. We're going to have 2 to a room in terms of sharing it. You know, breakfast will be part of it. You guys will do your language classes there. I think I mentioned in our last webinar that we're going to have catering, local food brought in 3 times a week for dinner for you guys. It's very clean. There's cleaning service that goes along with it, and you know, they have had international visitors stay there before, people associated with the university. It's an easy walk to like local markets and that kind of thing, and I think it's a very good setup. I haven't seen it firsthand. Our country coordinators are really excited about it. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing it right before you guys get there. It looks great online, and we'll send you guys a link to their website so you can see pictures and surrounding area.
Are there safe I'm sorry, I don't know why I cannot speak right now. Any safety boxes in the houses, or should I not be worried about anything getting stolen? Like just
we can consider that a safe environment.
Okay.
It's not safe in the sense where you leave cash on your bed and your passport lying on your table, but like if you put stuff away, lock it up in your room, it should be good. And that reminds me, that's something that we didn't even talk about, is money and, you know, handling money. One of the things I always do is I break my money up into 3 separate stashes. One is like a bank that I keep in a safe place, you know, usually in my room, you know, locked up somewhere, where I've got a few $100s of U.S. currency combined with local currency, which you get from the ATM. The second is, and generally I'll keep backup information in with that as well. Like we've talked about copies of passports or, you know, copies of credit cards. The second is like a traveler's wallet or roll that I'll keep on me, and then I'll have like, you know, about $50 or so, you know, $50 to $100 in combination of local currency and U.S. currency, that in case I want to buy something or pay for something that's in a store, that's my main wallet, and I pull that out. I'll also keep a roll of dirty singles in a different place. So like if I want to buy a bottle of water or a bottle of juice or something like that on the street, and I don't want to pull out something with my ID and my credit card and all the rest, I can just reach into that pocket and, you know, pull off like small change money and buy it, and that way if someone is like watching me or something like that and they want to do like a grab and dash, the most I'm going to lose is a few dollars rather than like a credit card or something larger. That's just what I do. People have asked me about that in other webinars.
On that note, if you don't know this already, I'm sorry if you do, and this is repetitive. If you're wearing a purse, like a crossbody bag, always face it towards the street, away from the street, because like people will go by on a moped and try to steal your bag. So like keep it on the inside part, not facing the road. Just a tough lesson learned the hard way by one of my friends, not me.
The other thing I wanted to, I guess that people usually ask about are smartphones, laptops, and tablets and cameras. And with smartphones, I mean, so many of us use our smartphones as cameras these days, and like the picture quality is better than most digital cameras. I would just think about, many of you are working with kids. I would just think about where is it that you want to pull your phone out, and what are you going to say if somebody wants to hold your phone or look at pictures or use it in some kind of way before you actually decide you're going to carry it with you every day or not. And also, if you lose your phone, it breaks, it's stolen, how will you feel about that? Is it a recoverable item for you, or is it the center of your life and everything is not backed up? So I would just think about those things. I think it's totally okay to bring your phone with you and to have it as part of your person, but just think about how you're going to handle it as an asset and how you're going to back it up. For those of you guys who are working in NGOs, you should plan on bringing laptops. That'll most likely be your workstation, and so please do that. Same thing with tablets. That if you use your tablet to watch movies, or if that's your main laptop or your computer, then do that as well. But just think about how you're going to take care of these things when they're not on your person. Like that you're going to put it away every day in your room, or however it is that you're going to treat them. And I think it's fine to bring all those things, including a large camera. But just think about how you're going to keep this stuff safe and what its profile is going to be.
This isn't like super important, but in terms of the housing, I thought last webinar you mentioned that like maybe there was going to be 2 single rooms and like the rest were going to be doubles. I personally don't have a preference, but I know like I do talk in my sleep, and like I don't know if that's going to bother people. So I just was wondering how you were planning on.
Yeah, I think the way unfortunately we had we're only going to have 5 in Indonesia. We just had Carter dropped out. He had some family things going on, and he just let us know this morning that he wasn't going to be able to do it. So what we're looking at right now is we've got 4 women and 1 guy. So I think that we're going to have the 4 women share rooms, and the guy is going to have the single room. Isaiah, I should call him Isaiah rather than the guy. So maybe, Kathleen, I think this is a good idea. Like maybe if we did like a compatibility questionnaire, just and we can do that also for our Zanzibar volunteers who are, I think, going to be at least one set are going to be sharing a room. So we can hopefully match people in a way that's just not random in terms of when you walk in, this is what you get. Do you think that's a good idea, Polo? Would that help?
Yeah. I personally don't I have no problem falling asleep, but I've been traveling with like so many people right now, and I don't stop talking in my sleep, so I don't want to bother anyone or anything like that.
Well, we could also some of you guys will have earlier, the ones working in schools have an earlier wake up time and start date, start time to a day than those who are in NGOs. So that might also be a logical way to break it up. Yeah. But I don't know. We'll figure that out, and I know that Kathleen will have a good idea of how to do it. Okay, so it's open offer to ask more questions in the future. Kathleen, would you mind reminding folks when their next webinars are? I know we have our alumni ones coming up and also our country experts.
Yes, hold on one second. I have it right here. I don't think they're until next week. So, but sorry.
And so for the country experts, we have someone from the Tanzanian embassy who's going to do the Zanzibar one, and we're either going to have someone from U.S.-Indonesia Society or the Indonesian embassy who's going to do the Indonesia one.
Yeah. So Christina, for Zanzibar, on Tuesday of next week, there's an alumni webinar. So an alumni of the Zanzibar program will be there. It's going to be at, I believe, 8 or 9 p.m., so it'll be in the evening. And you'll get a chance to ask her all of your questions or, get her insight on the experience.
Is that with Katrina by any chance?
Yes, I believe so.
Cool, right
on. Who will also be in Zanzibar this summer, I believe. So maybe you guys will get to see her around too. Both of the country expert webinars are on Wednesday the 29th. So Wednesday of next week, there'll be the country experts that Ben spoke about. And then the Indonesia alumni webinar is on Thursday evening. Thursday, June 30th. So this is it for webinars for this week, but next week there'll be a few more.
Good. Okay, guys, thank you so much for making the time for this. Like I said, it's the most important thing. And remember, don't engage in the trust fall. That's your takeaway. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
bye, guys.
guys.
Talk to you later.
Soon.
Bye.